My wife and I had just finalized the adoption of our baby girl. We were overjoyed. Our neighbor brought over gifts, took photos, said, "She looks just like my niece." We thought it was sweet, until 2 weeks later when we got a letter from her lawyer demanding custody. "You took what was ours," it read. Turns out, her niece had given the baby up for adoption in secret. And our neighbor was now claiming we had illegally stolen family blood. My wife Rachel and I had been trying to have a baby for nearly 10 years. We tried everything: IVF 3 times, adoption through the foster system, even looked into surrogacy. Nothing worked out. We'd come so close once, only for the birth mom to change her mind the day before the papers were signed. It was hard. We were getting older. I was 43, Rachel was 41. We were tired. We stopped talking about it for a while. We didn't want to hurt each other more than we already had. Then, out of nowhere, we got the call. It was a small private adoption agency in Oregon. The woman on the phone told us they had a baby girl, just born the day before. The birth mother had picked us from a file of waiting families. She wanted everything closed, no contact, and had already signed the paperwork giving up her parental rights. Rachel dropped to her knees. I remember that clearly. She just started sobbing. We didn't even think twice. We packed our bags and drove straight to Portland. The moment I held that baby in my arms, I knew I would do anything for her. She was so tiny. She had this reddish fuzz on her head, and this little crease between her eyes like she was already worried about the world. We named her Ava. 2 days later, we brought her home to Bellingham, Washington. The first week was all baby stuff: diapers, formula, bottles, crying, no sleep. But we didn't care. We were exhausted and the happiest we'd ever been. Friends brought over meals. Rachel's sister came down from Tacoma with baby clothes. Our pastor dropped off a quilt his wife had made. And then our neighbor, Jean, showed up. She lives across the street. Older woman, probably mid-50s, lives with her mother. She's always been nice. Nosy, but polite about it. She brought over a pie, apple, and a pink onesie that said, "Mommy's little sunshine." She asked to hold Ava. Rachel let her. She cradled Ava and smiled down at her like she'd known her forever. "She looks just like my niece did as a baby," Jean said. "Same nose. Same lips. Even the same little freckle near her ear. Funny how babies in the same family can look so alike." Rachel and I laughed, thinking she was just making small talk. Then she said, "Was she born in Oregon?" Rachel looked at her. "Yeah. Portland." Jean's smile didn't change, but her eyes did. "Interesting," she said. "My niece used to live down there. Just moved back a couple weeks ago." We thought she was just being chatty. People say stuff like that all the time. Small world. Kind of things. But what she said next made my stomach twist, even though I didn't understand why at the time. "Family has a way of finding each other," she said, then kissed Ava on the forehead and handed her back. 2 weeks later, we got a letter. It came in a plain manila envelope. No return address. Inside was a legal document, petition for custody. Filed by Jean Chambers. Attached to the petition was a letter in plain font, signed by her. "You took what was ours. She was never meant to be yours. She belongs with her family. This adoption was done under lies. She is family, and family comes first." I read it 3 times. I thought it was a prank. Then I looked at the custody petition. It was real. Jean had hired a lawyer. Rachel dropped the letter on the floor and sat down hard. She just kept saying, "What the hell? What the hell is this?" I called our adoption attorney right away. She asked for a scan of the papers. She was just as shocked. She said she'd seen contested adoptions before, but never from a neighbor. Then the truth came out. Jean's niece, Kayla, was Ava's birth mom. She was 19. She'd gotten pregnant while living in Portland and moved to Boise halfway through her pregnancy. She worked with an agency that specialized in closed adoptions. She didn't tell her parents. She didn't tell Jean. She wanted out. But right after Ava was born, Kayla went home for a visit. Jean noticed something was off and kept pushing until Kayla broke. She told her everything. And Jean snapped. Jean didn't care that Kayla had signed her rights away. She didn't care that the adoption was legal. She didn't even talk to Kayla again after that. She just decided, on her own, that we had stolen Ava from the family. Her lawyer tried to argue that Kayla had been pressured. That she was young, confused, and had made a decision she didn't understand. But we had records. Kayla had gone through every legal step. She had 2 video interviews with social workers saying she wanted no contact. She had written letters saying she never wanted her child to grow up in that household. Still, Jean filed for emergency custody. She asked the court to place Ava in temporary family care until things could be sorted out. I will never forget the feeling when the judge placed a 30-day hold on the adoption finalization. We weren't allowed to leave the state with Ava. Couldn't travel. Couldn't even change pediatricians without the court's permission. I sat in that courtroom staring at Jean, who sat 2 rows behind her lawyer with a smug little smile on her face. Like she'd already won. Rachel cried herself to sleep every night that week. I stopped going to work. I couldn't think straight. Every time Ava cried, I thought, what if they take her? What if she's gone next week? I started checking the door 3-4 times a night to make sure it was locked. I installed a camera above the front porch. That wasn't even the worst of it. The worst was when Jean started talking to our other neighbors. We found out later she'd been telling people that Ava was her family's stolen baby. That we tricked a young girl out of her own child. That we were playing house with someone else's blood. People started acting weird around us. One neighbor across the street suddenly stopped waving when I took Ava on walks. Another lady who'd brought us a lasagna a week earlier now crossed the street when she saw me. We were being painted as baby thieves. And we couldn't say a word, because the court ordered us to keep everything confidential while it played out. We were being destroyed, one rumor at a time. The court battle dragged on. Every day we waited to hear if our adoption would be upheld or torn apart. Rachel was barely eating. She sat in Ava's room rocking her to sleep, crying quietly so the baby wouldn't hear her. I spent every free second collecting emails, texts, videos, anything that could prove we hadn't done anything wrong. But Jean wasn't letting go. She filed more paperwork. She wanted visitation rights. Until custody could be transferred. She claimed we were alienating Ava from her real family. Her lawyer pushed hard. They said Ava deserved to be raised by her blood. They said Kayla had been manipulated. They even tried to subpoena Kayla, but she was gone, completely off the grid. The adoption agency said she'd moved, changed numbers, didn't want to be found. Then one night, everything escalated. It was a Thursday around midnight. Ava had just fallen asleep. Rachel and I were finally in bed, drained, when we heard something at the front door. A click. Then another. I jumped up and ran to the window. I saw movement. Someone ducked behind the bushes near our porch. I yelled. Turned on all the outside lights. Grabbed the bat from under the bed. By the time I got to the front door, whoever it was gone. But the doorknob was scratched. Someone had tried to pick the lock. I called the police. They came, took a report, but didn't find anything. Rachel was shaking. She kept holding Ava tighter and tighter, whispering, "No one is taking you. No one." I knew it had to be Jean. We couldn't prove it. But we knew. The next day, I installed 2 more cameras. One on the backyard. One facing the driveway. I printed a copy of the police report and handed it to our lawyer. She was furious. She said this kind of thing happens sometimes in contested adoptions, but never from a next-door neighbor. That week, our lawyer made a move. She filed a restraining order against Jean. That set off a whole new firestorm. Jean went ballistic. She stormed across the street screaming at Rachel while she was loading groceries into the car. I was at work. Rachel called me sobbing, locked in the car with Ava in the back seat. Jean had stood 2 feet from the window shouting, "You won't win! She's not yours!" The police came. Took another report. That was when we finally told the judge everything. We submitted the police reports, the videos of Jean coming too close to our house, the neighbor statements saying she'd been spreading rumors. The judge agreed to a no-contact order. Jean was no longer allowed within 200 feet of our house. For a while, things calmed down. We still had to go to court. The fight wasn't over. But at least we could breathe. Then one morning, Rachel opened our mailbox and screamed. Inside was an envelope. No stamp. No return address. Inside was a photo of Ava. It had been taken through our living room window. You could see her in her little swing, sleeping. On the back, in red pen, it said, "She remembers. Blood remembers." Rachel collapsed. I called the police again. They took the photo, but couldn't trace it. Our lawyer pushed for a permanent injunction. She also started pushing to speed up the final adoption hearing. But Jean had one last play. At the final hearing, her lawyer stood up and said, "We have a witness. The biological mother is here." I felt the blood drain from my face. Then I saw her, Kayla, walk into the courtroom. She looked different than in the agency videos. Pale. Tired. Nervous. She sat down on the witness stand. Jean smiled. But what happened next shocked everyone. Kayla told the judge everything. How she had chosen adoption. How she had no regrets. How Jean had shown up at her apartment 2 weeks ago, banging on the door, screaming that she had no right to throw away family. Kayla said she had to move again to get away. Then she looked over at us. At Rachel, who was holding Ava in her lap. "I chose them," she said, pointing at us. "They're her parents. They love her. I don't want her anywhere near that woman." Jean's face turned red. Her lawyer tried to object. The judge told them to sit down. Kayla gave the final word that day. "If she takes that baby, I'll fight to take her back myself, just to keep her away from Jean." The judge didn't rule that day. He said he'd make his decision in 1 week. That week was the longest of our lives. We slept with Ava between us. I barely went to work. Rachel didn't go at all. We didn't eat much. We barely spoke. We were just waiting. And then, finally, the ruling came. The ruling didn't go the way we expected. The judge upheld the adoption. We were officially Ava's legal parents. That part was good. We cried when we heard it, just broke down in the middle of the courtroom. After everything, it finally felt real. But then came the second part. The part that made my skin crawl. Jean wasn't ordered to stay away forever. Despite everything. The harassment, the photos, the late-night stalking, the judge didn't grant a permanent restraining order. He said there was insufficient direct evidence linking her to the threatening note. The photo wasn't enough. The handwriting couldn't be verified. All we got was a continued no-contact order for 6 months. Our lawyer was pissed. So were we. But the judge made it clear, unless Jean did something new, there'd be no extended protection. Rachel was scared. I was angry. But we told ourselves we could live with it. Ava was ours. That was the most important thing. We thought it was over. It wasn't. 2 months later, the whispers started again. It was little things at first. A flat tire one morning. We found a nail buried deep in the tread. Then Rachel's Facebook got hacked. Photos of Ava, ones we never posted, ended up online, attached to fake profiles. One profile said, "Missing baby girl. Family seeking help. Taken by out-of-state couple." Rachel's friend texted her. "Why is someone claiming they're Ava's family?" That was the start of the second wave. Jean had found a loophole. She couldn't come near us physically, but she started waging a war online. She joined private Facebook groups for reuniting lost family members. She posted Ava's photo, claimed she was taken through a shady agency and given to strangers. People ate it up. She never used our names, never said Rachel or Dan, but she gave just enough information. City, age, timeline, for people to start guessing. We got messages. Dozens of them. Why don't you just return her to her real family? You stole a baby and now you're hiding behind the law? I wanted to smash my phone. We told our lawyer. She said it would be hard to prove harassment unless Jean directly named us. This is the gray zone, she said. She's walking right up to the line and staying there. I didn't want to wait until she crossed it. Not again. So I started watching her. Jean had no clue I was onto her. I set up alerts for her online activity. Had a friend who worked in IT track the origin of one of the fake accounts. It led straight back to her IP address. Then I waited. And one night I got what I needed. She slipped. Someone in the Facebook group asked, "Do you know who has her now?" Jean answered, "Yes. Dan and Rachel, last name. They live in Bellingham." Boom. Direct accusation. Libel. Harassment. Violation of the no-contact order. I screenshot everything. Sent it to our lawyer. This time, it stuck. We went back to court. Jean looked surprised to see us. Her lawyer tried to argue she was just advocating for her family. But the judge wasn't buying it this time. He didn't just reinstate the no-contact order. He gave us a permanent protection order. Jean was barred from contacting us or Ava in any form, online or offline. If she came near us again, she'd face jail time. And then the judge did something I didn't expect. He fined her. Ordered her to pay $25,000 in legal costs for harassment, slander, and emotional distress. Jean went pale. Her lawyer looked like he'd swallowed a bug. Rachel squeezed my hand so hard I thought it would break. It felt like justice. Almost. But even after all that, something in me didn't feel done. We had won. But Jean had still smeared our names. She tried to ruin us. She made us question if we were safe in our own home. And she'd done it in secret, behind a keyboard, hiding like a coward. I didn't want revenge just in court. I wanted her to feel what we felt. The fear. The violation. The weight of having your world ripped apart by someone who thought they had the right. So I made a decision. I started small. I created a new email, one not tied to me or Rachel in any way. Then I joined every one of those, lost family, and wrongful adoption, groups where Jean had been posting. I knew exactly where to look. I watched. She wasn't posting anymore, but she was still commenting. Little things. Stirring people up. Playing the victim. Letting them believe she was the heartbroken aunt of a child stolen by strangers. So I gave them another story. Under the fake name I'd made, I started posting messages that looked like they were from someone who knew Jean. Someone from her past. I hinted at things. She talks about blood family, but gave her own sister's kid up years ago. She should tell the truth about what happened in Spokane in '98. I wonder if people here know Jean was investigated for elder neglect? None of it was illegal. I never said anything false. Just asked questions. Let people fill in the blanks. Let suspicion grow. And it did. Suddenly, the same people who cheered her on were turning. Wait, didn't she say she raised that kid? Now she's saying the mom abandoned her? Why does she keep changing details? What's this about an elder abuse report? I didn't stop there. I mailed copies of the restraining order and court transcripts to her church. Her HOA board. The senior center where her mother got daycare. All public record. All legal. Let them see who she really was. Jean tried to fight back. She posted that she was being stalked by the baby thieves. Said we were slandering her. But no one was listening anymore. She'd burned her credibility. A few weeks later, I saw her house go dark. Curtains drawn. Lights off all the time. Then came the for sale sign. She was gone within a month. Just packed up and disappeared. We finally felt peace again. Rachel smiled for real for the first time in a year. Ava was crawling now, saying little words. Our house felt like a home again, not a battlefield. But here's the truth I don't tell most people. I don't feel clean about what I did. I went looking for revenge and got it. I tore Jean's reputation apart piece by piece. I made sure she couldn't show her face in her own neighborhood. I don't regret it. But I do know what it cost me. I became someone who stalked my stalker. Who lied to strangers online to destroy someone's life. I became a man who couldn't sleep at night unless I knew I had hurt her more than she hurt us. In protecting my daughter, I became the kind of person I never thought I'd be. And maybe that's the part of the story that hurts the most. I didn't lose Ava. But I lost a piece of myself.